Welcome, everybody, to the Bassfug Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest all the way from Boone, North Carolina, Dylan Evans, a.k.a. Lavier. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. It's been a while in the making. Let's talk about More Creativity Records off the bat. It's funny. We've been doing this podcast for about a year and a half now, and there's a lot of kind of canon going on. I think we're going to need a Bassfug wiki soon of all the connections. We've had other alumni from MCR. I was wondering if you could talk about that, your collaboration with them, and how you ended up meeting and getting on board with their project.
Yeah, I used to be on MIDI Boys, like back in like 2016 or 2017 or something. And that was like a electronic, like mainly like SoundCloud label kind of thing. And we had a group of producers from all over the place. And I think that was how I came into contact with Michael Mason. He's the guy that founded the label. And then I also was throwing a lot of events down in North Carolina, and the guy that started MIDI Boys, Mason, he goes by Mister. He lives in Greensboro, which is like 2 hours from me. So we actually made like a real face-to-face connection and became pretty good friends. And then More Creativity Records happened, and we were kind of already in contact with Michael and stuff. So we went up to New York as MIDI Boys and did a show up there. And I think Michael played on that in like 2016. And then I had something in Boone called Crop Circle Club. We threw like house shows and kind of promoted all sorts of different music. But I was the electronic guy. So Zach from More Creativity Records, he kind of seems to do like most of the like he kind of runs the label now. Like Michael started it, so it's kind of just him and Michael as far as I know, and then a few of their friends help out with it as well. But I went up there and did a Crop Circle Club and MIDI Boys show in Brooklyn, and someone else. There's another collective involved. It was Crop Circle Club, More Creativity Records, and MIDI Boys. So that was like, I think we became like friends after that. And then a little while down the road, Zach basically brought up the idea of him being my manager, and I was like, heck yeah. And I also do all of the artwork for More Creativity Records releases too. So I'm kind of their artistic director or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good artwork. I've seen it. I've had to look at it a few times. Are you did you start doing visual art before you did start working with audio, or was it the other way around?
Well, I would say I've been drawing since I was like really little. My mom used to have to like kick me out of the house and make me run laps around the house, so I would like stop sitting on the floor and drawing.
Wow.
She's like, go make some friends. But I was also like into playing real instruments and stuff a lot. Like I took piano lessons as a kid, and then I joined like the school band, and I played trumpet and French horn, and then I played cello in the orchestra, and I play electric guitar too. Like I was in bands in high school and stuff, and I was in a punk band in Boone for a while, and now I'm helping produce for and playing in this like folk country artist band down here. But the actual production end of things came like towards the end of high school, so like 6 years ago or something, like 25 now. And I got into that just kind of weirdly because I like wasn't really big into electronic music, and then my friend showed me some stuff that I ended up liking a lot, and it kind of like opened that whole can of worms.
Who was it?
It was my friend Elijah Davis.
Oh, but I mean,
the artist.
Sure. Oh. Yes, that was shout out to Elijah, but the artist.
Yeah. Hey man.
Okay, yeah.
But it was there's this guy Longarm. He's out of St. Petersburg, Russia, I think.
Oh,
and
cool.
he like, it's a lot of like jazz oriented stuff, not like lo-fi jazz stuff. Like it was really like crazy well produced, and I think he recorded like a lot of his own samples and then just chopped them and made music out of that, which I thought was cool. And then there's this other guy Floex, who I think is also from, I think he's from like Czech Republic or something. He's somewhere very far east of here, but he was more of like a live ensemble type guy, so he plays like this electric clarinet thing and then like has a bunch of other artists that play with him. You can look it up on YouTube. He has like a bunch of cool performances in like these big like cool cathedrals and stuff. So that since I was so into the like organic instrumentation and all that, that was a good segue to like get me to start appreciating kind of a blend of the two. And then I eventually just kind of like came to a point where I can appreciate it all now, for the most part.
It's funny that you say organic instrumentation. One of my notes here is your project has very. It sucks when there's like three things I want to say at once because I'm always worried that I'm not going to be able to ask all my questions here. But I'll skip to this part. I noticed that your discography for your Lavier project, there's a lot of organic sounds in it. I wanted to sort of talk about that. You mentioned that you were playing guitar in your school band or afterwards. I wasn't sure if you were sampling guitars or if you were actually playing the guitar. So I was wondering if you could talk about live instrumentation in your work and also how to channel the organic sound. It's hard to describe, but it sounds like maybe like a Amon Tobin sort of foliage that sort of resonates in the back with your music. I don't know if you agree with that or.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Thanks for saying that, because that's a big comparison there. So I'm not mad about that. But yeah, when I started doing the Lavier project, I was doing a lot of live shows, and I was playing guitar and keyboard along with my sets, like while I was, DJing my tracks. Um, and that kind of got old after a while because I got like typecasted a lot. They'd be like, "Oh, that I play on a dubstep show," and they'd be like, "Oh, this is really chill, beautiful music, dude. Like, I wish you could open every show." So I was getting crappy time slots, and like everyone was just like, "Oh, he's that producer with the guitar." So I was like, you know what? Like, no more guitar for y'all. So I just started focusing on the production because I wanted to highlight that the guitar was kind of masking all the production stuff. But I still like to include it in some of my like prettier tracks just because that's the instrument that I'm best at. And I'm trying to think of how I'm saying this. I was also like really into jazz stuff too, and that's like I played a lot of jazz with my guitar. Like that was the only instrument I did jazz on decently. And I think a lot of my writing and composing borrows a lot of jazz stuff. Not so much lately, but it definitely started that way. So it just kind of felt natural to have the guitar over some of those chord progressions. It wasn't like too much of a struggle to meld the two.
For your organic sounds, so you're using traditional instruments, but are you recording your own Foley? Are you walking around town in the forest with like a Zoom, or how are you getting that sort of sound in the background for the ambience, I guess?
It's like half and half. I in 2018 I did a sample pack with Splice, and I had to come up with a whole bunch of sounds out of nowhere. So I spent a lot of days just like in my studio, like cutting beer cans in half with a knife and stuff. So just to get all those interesting textures. But I don't always use like my own sounds for stuff like that. Like it's, because you can go as crazy with that as you want. Like you can just like not use anything from anyone else. But for me, it's like if I can make the sound, but like it's just there and ready to use, like I might just like drop in someone else's Foley samples just from some other sample pack. But there are certain times where like the song I think can benefit a lot with just me getting in front of a mic and shaking a can full of change or something if I don't have anything else that will fit the feel I'm looking for.
What kind of microphones are you using?
I just have an AKG C414.
Okay.
It's like a large diaphragm condenser, and then I have a SM57. I want to get a something I can do stereo miking with because it's when I record it, it's all in mono for the most part, and then I have to go in there and do a ton of stereo imaging, like widening it and stuff. So if I had a stereo setup, that would save me a lot of time and probably get a lot more authentic results. But am not working with a lot of money right now, so I will eventually get that, but not right now.
It's interesting that you're talking about the beer cans and creating your own Foley. Sometimes I think about what I would recommend to a new producer. And I've been using this Zoom H1N, just like the crappy $100 portable recorder. And if you never used it before, you'd think, well, why do I need this? I just have my cell phone. But when you get one, you start using it for a lot of things that you wouldn't even think of. I'm wondering, do you have any sound design tips for getting that organic texture? And do you think that maybe there's a lot of artists that could use more texture to sort of bring life to their art?
Yeah, I mean, I think in most cases, yes. Sometimes if you go like too organic with it, though, like when you play it out live, it kind of loses some of its impact. But yeah, as far as like sound design things that I do a ton of stereo imaging, just to like make sure that the track is filled out, all the way across the spectrum. And then also like a lot of groove things. Like I like generally quantize, but a lot of times I'll make things intentionally imperfect so that it has more of a human feel to it. And that helps a lot. Plus, you can just make some insane grooves if you just move your hi-hats around a little bit, or like make them late, or have your snare hit early, or just all that kind of stuff goes a really long way from taking something from sounding kind of stale and produced to making it sound human.
I think that's what DJ Shadow did, and that's sort of what made him sort of stand out from, I guess, a lot of people in the late 90s,
Yeah, definitely. He was super killer with that stuff. That's also kind of in the realm of like stuff I could get into before I was fully into electronic music, because it had so much of a real aspect to it just because of his sampling and all that.
Let's talk about your punk and folk country projects, because myself, I remember I grew up sort of in a hick town, and I was really into Motorhead and White Zombie and just trash like that. No offense, they're great bands, but Motorhead's awesome. But electronic music for me was that Abadi Abada song and just garbage like that. But I started to listen to Aphex Twin in the late 90s, and it started to I was like, oh wow, this is a thing. You could make music with drum machines and not have it sound like garbage. I'm wondering if you could talk about, elaborate more on how you were, I guess, making traditional music before you've stumbled upon electronic music. And did that help you when you finally got in front of a DAW?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so like I said, I was in like my school's just like band doing trumpet and stuff, and then that was like fun, and I was pretty good at it. I was always like, second chair, because the kid in first chair was like the band director's kid, so he was just naturally going to be freaking ridiculous at it.
That's school band nepotism, let me tell you.
Yeah, and it was the same way in orchestra. I was third chair because there were these two other kids that had been playing since they were 4. But I was like totally content with that because they were cool people, and like there was just an acceptance where it's just like, I'm just never going to be as good at you as this.
Yeah.
Or good as you at this. But yeah, then around like the end of middle school, I grew up like going to church and stuff, and I had to play in the youth group praise band one Sunday, and then like some of the adults in the adult praise band saw that, and they're like, yeah, kid's pretty good at guitar. So I just joined the adult band and played with them like all through high school, which was a really great experience, but a really weird experience because I'm not a very religious type anymore. I kind of grew away from that.
Happens.
The more I became myself. But that was great practice doing like just contemporary like Christian rock and Christian country, and like it exposed me to playing a lot of different styles of music.
Yeah, and then that religious area produces some of the best musicians you're ever going to hear in your life. Best engineers, best sound engineers, best techs. It's crazy.
yeah, they go hard on like
Yeah,
every
yeah.
aspect of the live music performance, which is
Good.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like a breeding ground for some good stuff. Um, but yeah, after that, I met this kid who was like in college, I think, but I was like 13. He had a band. And he was like, "Dude, you should come play with my band." And this was like a rock band, and they were all either like graduating high school or going into college, like 5 or 6 years older than me. So I started playing with them, and that was really cool to be like the 13-year-old that was keeping up with them and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I was like 15 or 16, we did like a short tour, like did like Pittsburgh and I think Ohio and then Nashville, Tennessee and Memphis, Tennessee. Um, so that was definitely like super formative. Like we were taking that band pretty seriously by that point. So I was like, I'm gonna do music like no matter what. Um, and then my senior year of high school, I went to like this charter school that specialized in music, and that's kind of what got me really into uh, jazz and stuff like that. And then so yeah, by that point I was like, okay, this is like what I'm trying to do with my life.
Nashville is just renowned for its talent. I mean, it's definitely in the book of music. Nashville is in there. Did you hang around there a lot? Were you learning a thing or two, or was it just a brief stint?
No, like we were just there for the day of the show, and then we had to get to the next place. And I was also like 15 or 16, so like
Yeah.
I couldn't really go do like Nashville things, like go get a beer or like check out the local bar scene or
I guess,
anything.
yeah.
I was just like, my mom like told the singer of the band, before we left for the little tour, she was like, if anything happens to my son, like I'm gonna kick your ass.
Oh,
So
wow.
my experience on the tour was a lot of the singer just being like, Dylan, like you can't come to this after party or else your mom's gonna hang me.
Here's the Game Boy Advance. Do not leave this room.
Literally, like, they left me in a hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee, while they went to this after party with a bunch of like 30-year-olds. I was so pissed off at them, and they all came back all messed up and stuff. I was like, "Y'all have fun,"
Wow.
but it's probably good that I didn't go.
Yeah. I noticed that there was some horns in your music as well. Do you incorporate some of your early horn playing in your live music, or is that just like VSTs or something?
That was probably like an old sample. That's most of the time for the horn stuff. Like I just dig back into some stuff from like the 40s through 60s, and I don't really like seek out the horn samples. It'll just be like I'll have this thing that I've like chopped up and be like, oh, like this song would be a good place to use this. I use like a lot of like John Coltrane samples, and sometimes if I'm doing like lo-fi stuff for a rapper or something, I'll like dig into some Wes Montgomery for like soft guitar stuff. But I usually just try to play that, but I'm not as good as Wes Montgomery, so sometimes that works better for sampling.
Where are you channeling? This is going to sound really dumb, but where are you channeling this vibe from? When I'm listening to your music, it's a lot of it is so satisfying because it's just so natural. I don't want to say it's predictable, but when you're listening to it, you sort of know where it's going because you're sort of aligned with it. One of the songs that I really felt this a lot was Assurance. I found it was just really, really satisfying to listen to. I presume after talking to you, you play guitar on that as well.
Yes.
But I'm wondering, for a new producer, I think they spend a lot of time learning the DAW, learning the nerdy stuff, which is, you have to, I get it. But I think there's a lot of people that miss sort of the soul of music and sort of miss the fact that music is kind of like a drug. It's meant to sort of mess with your emotions. I'm wondering if you could sort of talk about that, and if when you're producing, if there's like, I don't know, some ritual, or how are you channeling this vibe? Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is a tough question, but like it's a lot of different things. Like some of the best stuff I've made when I've just been like incredibly freaking sad. So it's like easy to channel that emotion into something. Like that sounds dumb, but I feel like sadness is like something I can channel really well with my music. And I think that's why I like punk and emo stuff so much
I
too.
was gonna say there's entire genres that are cached in all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like let's just sit around and be sad. No, but also like I try to like on my that Deadweight EP I put out, it was mainly like more like pretty tracks, less like smacking stuff and more just like focused on the pretty aspect. And I think that's just like I do always like want my stuff to have like some sort of like ethereal thing going on with it. Um and I don't know like where that comes from, but it's like I know when I achieve it for sure, and I know when I'm not achieving it. I think a lot of it's just like from listening to a lot of beautiful music. Like I want to be able to do that as well. Like I really like Flying Lotus, and his soundscapes are like so full of texture and like but they have like this wonkiness to them as well. It's just like really beautiful kind of like cosmic sounding stuff.
Um, the there's a couple of directions I want to go here because we're talking about that. You know what? Let's just talk about COVID first, because I kind of want to talk about the sound design, but let's talk about how COVID has impacted you. Has it impacted your ability to play live? I presume so. I think you said you might be doing something soon, but
Yeah.
maybe we could talk about that a little bit and maybe talk about the pandemic in general and how it's affected you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's definitely affected me because prior to all this, I was playing a lot of shows. Like even if it was like just in Boone, it would sometimes be like 2 shows a weekend every week of the month. Whether it was just like a house party or like this bar needed a DJ for the night, or like a friend had a DJ drop off a lineup and needed someone, or something that I had planned out in advance, or like an out of town show or something. But I was very busy all the time with that. And so there's the financial aspect of that is like, whoa, that was, I didn't realize like how much that was helping like supplement my income until I didn't have it. And then I was like, why am I broke all the time?
Yeah.
And I also just love playing shows, especially in Boone, because it's such a small scene here, but everyone that's a part of it is like incredibly supportive. Like, you know, we'll fill up like 100 cap venue with 150 people that are just like super, super, super excited to be there. And we try to bring in like headliners. Like I help a group book some stuff around here too. We try to bring in headliners from all over the place. So it's cool like when we can bring a big artist to such a small scene, because it's like a treat for our people and like we enjoy it too, obviously.
Yeah.
So not having that, like there's a whole bunch of people just like not knowing what to do with themselves right now, at least in my town. But yeah, I'm looking at having a show at the beginning of April. It's supposed to be announced tomorrow, so hopefully by the time this is out, I won't be spilling beans. But
Yeah. Don't worry, it'll be a while. Yeah.
cool. But yeah, I was really anxious about doing it, but because I want to make sure there's going to be like a ton of precautions, just because you don't want anything bad to happen. Like you don't want it to be a super spreader or anything. But this show's like it's going to be like 50 people in like a 600-person outdoor space.
Okay.
So and they're doing tables. So you have to buy tickets by the table, and the tables are all distance, and we're playing like outside in front of the venue, like out towards this kind of parking lot compound kind of thing. And it also requires like a same day negative COVID test. And so I was really worried about whether I should do it or not. But I think like at some point, like we're going to have to figure out a way to make this work. So I was like, I just basically like, maybe this is a chance to set an example for how things are going to have to be for a little while. Like if we're going to do it at all, it needs to be done absolutely safely.
If there were illegal raves for jungle music, believe me, there's going to be illegal raves because there hasn't been a show in 2 years. It's going to start happening.
For sure.
Yeah,
I'm definitely not a fan of like these. You hear about like 600-person shows happening in like South Carolina and stuff, and it's like, I don't know about all that. Like, I don't really agree with that. But I also
get where they're coming from.
If you can find a way to do it safely, then go for it.
Yeah.
But it requires effort on like everyone's part. Like the artist has to be willing to, stand up for, doing the right thing, and the promoter needs to keep their word, and the venue needs to be enforcing that, and the fans need to do their part too. So it's a lot of things that have to come together to make an event like that successful. But I think we can do it. Like,
yeah, I'm a bit worried that it's not going to go back to normal, and that I don't know. I'm a bit worried about it, honestly, to tell you the truth. But because it doesn't seem like we're getting out of it. I don't know. Yeah. Call me a pessimist, but
no, I was feeling that way for a good while, for sure. But these vaccines seem to be encouraging. Like in America, I think they're vaccinating like 1 million or 2 million people a day or something. Yeah. But that's not much compared to like how many people are here. But I think I'm interested to see what kind of difference that makes in a few months.
Let's talk about your some of your new releases that are coming out. You said you have some new material, some new singles.
Yeah. So I'm actually dropping one tomorrow, which is like March 11th. But is that the? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yeah. It's Mario Day today.
Hey, wait, Mario Day?
It's a stupid thing to sell more Mario games, but March 10th is Super Mario Day for Nintendo.
Oh, because it's like it spells Mario.
Yeah, sorry.
I was like, wait a minute.
Wrong podcast. Cool. Yeah.
Well, tomorrow's 3/11 Day. If you like to
yeah.
Yeah, that is called. The track is called "Are You All Right," and it's coming out on More Creativity Records. And I'm excited about it. It's more like kind of the material we've been talking about. Like it's got a nice groove to it, and there's some nice big shakers and ride cymbals and pretty synths and stuff. So I'm excited to see what people think of it, because it's heavy too, but it's not like heavy in the traditional way. It thumps. So we'll see what people think.
I want to go back to something I wanted to touch on earlier. I want to talk about your sound design. I wanted to talk about your DAW and your VSTs that you're using and what kind of gear. You have already told us about the microphones, but I'm curious what your production setup looks like. And maybe while you're explaining it, if we could add a little spice on the question, what advice would you give to a beginner getting into music? You sound like you grew up into it, but there's a lot of people, maybe they're like 21, 22, and they just got Ableton Lite. Maybe you could talk about your process, and then maybe touch on what advice you would give to a newcomer.
Yeah, I think just so I don't forget that part, the advice I would say, like, something I did was like I waited a really long time before I got third-party plugins, so I was kind of forced to get extremely familiar with just Ableton stock stuff, which I think gave me a good knowledge of how those plugins actually affect the sound that they're processing. I think a lot of people jump right in and like get CRM or something on their first day of producing, which like that can work, but it really helps to have a little bit of background information on like just how the different types of plugins work, like how EQs work, how compressors work. It can be a little bit boring, but it's once you have a firm grasp on how that stuff works, then you can really use it to its fullest potential. Plus you won't spend a heck ton of money on plugins too early. I have a problem with that now, but I waited like 3 or 4 years just using Ableton stuff. You don't have to wait that long. I kind of like had a point to prove with it, but I'm glad I did it though. And
it sort of future proofs you too, because sometimes I've been producing for a very long time, since 1996, and right. when you learn the core fundamentals, then you don't have dependencies on like the first version of Zeta that you can't find the CD key for because you lost it 15 years ago or something like that, right? You know,
Exactly.
you know your ADSRs, you know what an LFO is, and you could use any crap that is on the Android store or whatever, and still be able to replicate that Nine Inch Nails synthesizer that you wanted from the Fragile or something. So
Yeah,
I totally
exactly.
agree
Like, you
with
don't
what you're
have to
saying.
rely on presets as much or any, like, you can just be like, you can hear something in a track and be like, I wonder how they did that. And it's like, oh, probably like, saturation and OTT, and then,
Mm.
some LFO or like just things like that. It's cool as you learn more, you start to surprise yourself and you're like, oh, like I can do that. It makes it like it's such a fun, joy filled aspect of producing. Is like when you get to a point where you're like, oh, like I can hear something in my head and like get pretty close to it in my DAW.
Yeah. Sometimes it ruins music for you. You'll be in the drugstore or something getting some Pepto-Bismol and you go, "Oh, that preset from Absinthe 3. that's didgeridoo or whatever."
Yeah, it's definitely like soiled the way I listen to music a bit, because now I just listen, I'm like, I wish this mix down was a little different. Like even
Yeah.
with like folk music and stuff, I'm like, oh, I would like this so much more if they like, just a number of. It's just like I nitpick, and then I'm like, I'm not even listening to the like lyrics or the composition at this
Yeah.
point. It's hard to separate that now.
Yeah, you hear the Vengeance sample pack and the Cashmere snare drum and all that stuff. Let's talk about your DAW and your VSTs, and if you have any gear and your favorite hardware. Let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah, I use Ableton as my DAW, and for VSTs, for sound design, like when I'm actually making my patches and stuff, I usually just like go to Operator, which is an Ableton stock thing. And that's like an FM synth plugin. So I love that for like sub basses. I love it for pads. Like you can really do a wide range of stuff just starting there. Um, and there's like an analog engine on Ableton too. It's just called Analog, and that is a pretty cool one as well. But I've just gravitated more towards Operator over time for whatever reason. Um, I use a lot of Waves plugins for like mixing stuff. I got the Waves Gold bundle on Black Friday for like $90 or something. It's usually like close to 1,000, I think. And it's just like jam packed with good reverbs and compressors and EQs and maximizers and limiters and all. It's I'm very happy I got that, because that's like I use it so much.
Yeah.
And then I use the Isotope Ozone bundle a lot for mastering, and even just for like mix down stuff. Like the stereo imager in Ozone is awesome because you can it's like a 4-band thing, so you can center your sub and then like have your highs fan way out. And
Oh, nice.
So there's a crazy amount of control. And like when I was saying how I record all my samples in mono, like I'll drop it in there and then spread it out, so it's not just taking up a tiny little part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I have Serum, but I don't use it as much as I thought I would. But I think a lot of it is just because I still have a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on in that plugin, and I just haven't learned about all of it yet. So I think as I learn more, I might start using it more, but I don't really like spending all the time to mess around and make something that I could just make an Operator. But there's stuff you can do in Serum that you can't do in Operator, obviously, but I'm just haven't really needed to get into that territory yet. But yeah, I eventually like want to become a Serum master, but just haven't needed to yet.
Yeah, it seems like Serum is the go-to synth for everybody these days.
Yeah, if you're making like weird trap sounds or cool like bass patches, and it's definitely great for that. But I just haven't really taken the time to explore it too much.
What's your? Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say I use Trash 2 like crazy, like just for beefing things up. That's probably on most of the channels in every track I put out, like just to like fill out the sound.
I'm curious what your guitar rig is, if it's anything fancy or if it's just scaled down or what are you using with that?
For live stuff, not really. I don't really do it for my Lavier stuff anymore. But if I'm playing in the country band or whatever, I have a Schecter Hellraiser is the model on my guitar, and I play through a Fender Twin Reverb, and I got a reverb pedal and an overdrive pedal and a volume pedal, and I keep it pretty simple though. And then when I'm tracking for Lavier stuff, I have this, I think it's a Waves thing. It's called Guitar Tool Rack,
Okay.
and you can model like the head and the cab, and then there's mic options, like if you want a ribbon mic or a condenser mic or a dynamic mic, and there's mic placements, and then there's like a ton of control in it, so you can get pretty much any sound you want out of that. Because I just don't have a big enough space to mic up a whole guitar rig. Like I share a house with my girlfriend and our roommate, and if I were to turn on the twin reverb in here, it would blow the roof off.
Yeah, if you have a Fender 412, you're gonna get an eviction notice. Yeah. Let's we're at the end of the interview. Dylan, thank you so much for your time. I just kind of want to end on, we were talking earlier about you had a big track that you were getting discouraged with. I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, and maybe if we could dive into being discouraged as an artist.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely just something that is inevitable, whether it's like financial struggles by like, you're like, why did I choose this lifestyle? Or if it's just getting stuck on tracks all the time. The latter is kind of what I'm dealing with on this big track. It's like, it's going to be like 6 or 7 minutes long when I finish it. And I kind of put it to bed for like a month just to let it marinate and see if I had any new ideas. And the other day I spent like 4 hours on it doing like a bunch of stuff that I thought was going to be really great for the track. And then I listened back and I was like, I have completely ruined like all of my favorite aspects of this track are no longer there. It has been replaced with something I dislike. So, and that just like happens. So I think what I'll do is just let it sit on the hard drive for a while and start some new stuff and come back to it in a couple months or a year or whatever. The last EP I put out was like a lot of that stuff I had started in like 2017, but I just didn't have the skills to accomplish what I wanted to when I started writing it. So when I brought it back, I was like, oh, I see what I was going for, and like now I can actually do that. So I just like rework really old stuff, or I think the best thing to do when you're discouraged is like keep working on something. Like it doesn't have to be the track that you're stuck on, but it can be good to just like start something else just to get your confidence back up or get your mind working again.
Yeah. I was curious because you said you went back and it was totally different. Do you have like a backup plan, like in your workflow? Do you like go song A, and then when you do a big change, rename it to like song B, so then you could go back to your original point, I guess, like a save point?
Sometimes I'm like pretty horrible about that. In this case, no, I don't have anything to go back to, so that's why it stings.
Yeah.
But that's what I should have done, and sometimes I think to do that, but not always.
It happens.
I'm like really disorganized, and like my hard drive is like so scary, and I don't like to look at it. But it's I don't know. Like I do my best. You can always be more organized, but I'm not really that type of person.
Dylan, thank you so much for your time. I totally appreciate it. This has been a great interview. Is there anything you would like to add before we go?
No, just keep an eye out for more releases from me. I have that one coming out tomorrow, and then I'll probably have another thing coming out in April or May, and then hopefully putting like an EP or an album out by the end of the year. But that's not like a solid plan. I just would like to see that happen. And also just thank you for having me on. This has been nice.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. What are your socials so people could go check you out?
I'm Lavier Music on everything, just no spaces or anything. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and SoundCloud, and then I'm on Spotify and all that stuff too if you want to check that out. And then I'm on Lavier or on Bandcamp as lavier.bandcamp.com. So if anyone wants to buy music, Bandcamp is definitely the most direct way to support me. Plus, you get nice WAV files. So
nice.
Yeah.
We'll add a link in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And I'm just going to end the interview, and I'll say goodbye in a second. Thanks, everybody. And don't forget to check us out at bassfug.com. Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you by the superwill64.com Entertainment Network. For more great shows, podcasts, and music, please visit superwill64.com.